Having the right to vote is something that many of us take for granted, but that's not the case in every country of the world. Even here in Britain, the concept of one person, one vote has only been a fundamental principle in our democracy since the 1940s. At various times before that, if you were poor, if you were female, or sometimes if you had the wrong religion, you were denied the right to vote. But there is one group of people in our country who are still denied that basic right. A group of people who can serve in our armed forces, get married, have sexual relations, leave school, change their name by default, pay income tax, claim benefits, and a whole range of other things that they can do. I'm talking, of course, about the 1.5 million 16 and 17-year-olds in our country. The aims of the Votes at 16 campaign are threefold: to engage 16 and 17-year-olds who already hold many responsibilities in our society, as I've described; to empower 16 and 17-year-olds through giving them a democratic right in order to influence decisions which are going to define their future, and also to inspire them to get involved in our democratic society. Many of these young people are very knowledgeable and very passionate about the world, and are as capable as any other person of engaging in our democratic society. Participation in free elections, I remind you, is a fundamental right guaranteed by the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. 16 and 17-year-olds, if given the vote, will be able to raise issues that are pertinent to them and able to have an influence over key decisions affecting their outcomes. Other countries who have given young people the right to vote in either some of their elections or all of them include the Isle of Man, Jersey, Austria, Nicaragua, Brazil, Ecuador, Argentina, Germany, Hungary, Slovenia, Norway, and of course, close to home, Scotland. And let's talk briefly about Scotland, because the recent referendum is a classic example of inspiring a group of people. 100,000 16 and 17-year-olds registered to participate. Over 80% of them actually went out and cast those votes. That was a superb outcome as far as democracy is concerned. The Welsh First Minister, Carwyn James, was quoted as saying in The Independent, "The case has been made much more strongly for 16 and 17-year-olds to have a vote in elections in the United Kingdom. It's now very difficult to argue against it happening. The mould has been broken and it now needs to be looked at with urgency." And he's absolutely correct. We've got 16 and 17-year-olds ready to engage and participate. Many are already engaging in politics in significant numbers. 85% of secondary schools have a school council. 20,000 young people are active in youth councils across the country. 600 of them are youth members of Parliament. Making young people wait further is squandering their energy, squandering their passion. When the Electoral Commission last consulted the public about this, 72% were in support of giving the vote to these young people. What is stopping Parliament ending this injustice? And what is stopping this Council giving support to this campaign?
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Shahid, will you second the motion and either speak now or reserve your right to speak later in the debate?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wish to second the motion and reserve my right to speak. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. We'll open it now to debate. Councillor John Fox.
Although I put my hand up to vote against it, it's only my personal opinion. I didn't want people to say that we're going to vote unanimously for it when I'm against it. So it's just my right to vote against it. The reason I vote against it is quite simple. I don't think 16-year-olds know a lot about life, to be honest. 18, it's brought down from 21 to 18. You've only got to look at the consultation with the Youth Council on the bowling green. And they said, why are we wasting money on bowling greens? Well, if we said we're going to close skateboard parks, there would be a different opinion from the Youth Council. So I just don't think they really understand the full fundamentals of how the council works or how the country works. That's just my opinion.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Fox, please.
I rise to support Councillor Sanford's motion on giving 16-year-olds the right to vote. But a question I have for the Liberal Democrats in this chamber is why votes at 16 was not considered one of their lines in the sand when they were negotiating a coalition with the coalition government at the start of this Parliament. I believe that giving 16-year-olds the vote will have a positive impact on the declining numbers of people choosing to vote in this country, and by engaging people at a younger age, it will instil a pattern of voting which will hopefully stay with them for life. I'm a firm believer in no taxation for no representation, and so if you are old enough to work and pay taxes, then you should be old enough to vote. And if we think 16-year-olds are responsible enough to take seriously the decision to join the army and fight for their country, or get married, then surely we also consider them old enough to take the responsibility of voting seriously. The Labour Party has committed to giving 16 and 17-year-olds the vote if elected next May, meaning that 16 and 17-year-olds will be able to vote as soon as the 2016 local elections. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Lane, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I too would like to oppose the motion. Although I'm not surprised it's coming from a party that will be desperate for votes in the coming years. Councillor Sanford did refer to the... they're allowed their opinion, but I've got mine, I'm afraid. Councillor Sanford referred to the reduced voting age in Scotland. But that was only on one issue, wasn't it? It's a yes or no on one issue. It's a lot wider subject in the real world down here in England. And I'm afraid young people, 16 to 18, in some cases past that stage, do still rely on people for help. There's parents who will influence them, teachers will influence them, and talking of which, I do believe that come next year, children or teenagers will have to remain in education of some sort at the age of 18. So they'll always be easily influenced, I'm afraid. Then also there's the issue of, all right, people register to vote, but how many will actually go out and vote? Because the younger portion of the voting population shows the weakest turnout, I'm afraid, in this country. And so therefore you could be even further barred to vote. When it comes to people serving in the armed forces, they'll still be under protection as well, because I'm pretty sure they're not allowed to join the front line, so there are no risk, they're still under protection, I'm afraid. So that's what I have to say, I'm afraid, and I'll be opposing this motion.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Swift, please.
Mr. Mayor, what I've got to say here, I'd say exactly the same if I was at a secondary, modern or a technical college, or even at a university. When I stood for election the first time, the voting age was 21, and it was a 72% poll on that occasion. It's 18 years of age now, and if you get 30 to 35, you're damned lucky. And in the area of the city where the youngest population is, over at Hampton, it was 18% last year. And compared with when I was a youngster of 14 years and started work, joined a trade union, and went about and knew what life was all about, I'm sorry to say that the 16-year-old today hasn't got the nappies off the backside at this stage. So as far as I'm concerned, well, it's the gospel truth. They're carried about now from pillar to post, left, right and centre, and as far as I'm personally concerned, 18, and they can't vote at 18 now. You'll go round they can vote at 18, but they don't bother to vote. And if it's the old geriatrics like me that hold the system up.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Rush, please.
Yeah, I'll try to add to follow that. I think we've already starting to encourage youngsters through the youth parliament, and there's the democracy weeks where we go into schools, and I know the Foxes do that, I believe. So we need to encourage youngsters to take an interest. That they can do all sorts of things legally, which we've heard, which I'll recount. But the other thing really is that it was mentioned by Councillor Fox that the youngsters may not support a bowling green, for example, but they would a skate park. And I wonder whether the reverse will be true, is those that want their bowling green would say, but that's better than having the youngsters on the skate park, so let's have that instead. So I think each age group, whatever your interest is, you're going to fight that corner and say we prefer that to something else. So I don't think that's reason enough to say 16-year-olds shouldn't be voting. I do believe we should be encouraging youngsters to vote. I think if we did, they would hopefully take a bigger interest. I was one of the first of the 18-year-old voters, and I must confess that I voted Conservative in that general election. I've never did since. It wasn't the best of governments, but that's another issue. So you might say then as an 18-year-old I was naive enough to do that. But took an interest, and I believe in those days the 18-year-olds did vote. Their age group, our age group now, and we at 18 then voted, and we still do. So I think if we let 16-year-olds vote, we can bring in that ethos to make them take an interest in what's going on. Of course, not all 16 and 17-year-olds are bright and interested and 18 to be worthy citizens. You watch them come home from Jack home sometimes, you do wonder. But when you talk to them, they really are decent kids if you talk to them sensibly. So, I'm fully in favour of this motion and wholeheartedly support.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Arkins, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I standing to oppose this motion. But when I think back to 1996 and the young Master Arculus at school, yes, I was physically mature. Yes, I could have left and joined the army, I suppose. I chose not to, but was I mentally mature enough to exercise the franchise? Was I mentally mature enough to understand how the impact of my vote is the impact it has on everybody else in society, in the community? No, I wasn't. And I don't think that 16-year-olds now are any different to me when I was. I question actually whether 18 is young enough to be the cut-off that prevents people voting either. It takes people maturing. It takes people a long time to mature, to become politically sensible, whether they're politically active or not. Some of us in this chamber, I suppose, from my point of view, but I don't see why 16-year-olds that don't have any qualifications, don't have any life experience, aren't mentally mature, don't have really a stake in society at this point, should exercise the same franchise that I'm entitled to. So I would oppose the motion on those grounds. I also would remember that even though I was politically active at 16, I wasn't upset not to be able to vote, and I don't know where this call is coming from now. I don't hear 16-year-olds in the street insisting on voting at general elections. I do hear parties that think they're more likely to get youngsters' votes clamouring for this.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Murphy, please.
There is a debate to be had whether people are old enough or whatever, but actually I want to stick up for young people and young people in this city who I find in the main are very mature and make very, very good decisions, and certainly would give people the right to speak, and if they had a vote on extortionate allowances our members are getting, would vote against it. They really would. This party over here and these people here that were trying to let me not speak remind me of the old Tories who only let you have a vote if you owned property, if you were a male, if you were over such an age. This is just an extension of the franchise. For somebody who grew up in Northern Ireland, where your background made you had a vote but didn't have a vote because of gerrymandering, I think this is very, very important. But you know what? Things haven't changed in 100 years. There are right-wing, authoritarian, undemocratic people and tendencies within some political parties in this chamber that don't believe in representative democracy. You've shown that tonight. You're going to do it again by voting against this one. It's not because of your arguments and your IQ. Should people who've got an IQ or a job be allowed to have a vote or not? You think like you think about education. You think there should be a university education and privileged education for your children, but not for other people's children. Get rid.
Thanks, Councillor. Councillor Seaton.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Murphy thinking that he knows what we think. Goodness me. At 16, you can get married and have a baby. Yes, but I believe it's too young to do either of those things. I hope members agree. However, we are where we are, and if at 16 you can, as Councillor Sanford says, work full-time, pay taxes, get married, enter a civil partnership and join the armed forces, then why not vote? So I will support this motion. Just to respond to Councillor Ash, at 18 I voted Liberal Democrat and I never have done again. I've certainly never felt any need to vote Labour. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Saltmarsh, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was just picking up a point about, I think Councillor Lane made about young people having to stay in education and training longer. But as far as I'm aware, current affairs and politics are still subjects that are taught at school and subjects for discussion. I think it would have more relevance to students if they actually had the vote and put that into practice.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Thurlborn, please.
Sorry, I'll be really quick. I've got 3 kids. They was all absolutely mature and very sensible and could have voted at 16. But more importantly, 2 years ago, I went out to employ a new apprentice. I had a queue as long as you could possibly imagine wanting to come and work as this apprentice. And it was the hardest thing I've ever had to do. But every single one of them was intelligent, rounded, talented, all from this city. And I can honestly say that there was every single one of them would have voted and would have had thought about that vote and should be entitled to vote. They are fully rounded people, and particularly in this city. I was amazed by the quality. So to say they're not ready is not true. Give them the vote.
Hear, hear.
Councillor Harrington.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, I'm sure we will appreciate maturity doesn't manifest itself on just the strike of a clock when you turn 16. My biggest critic is my 15-year-old granddaughter. Many a time we get into debate where it has to be interjected by other members of the family to stop us probably going a little bit too far. Her world is idealistic, she's ambitious, as is a lot of her colleagues at that age, and I do appreciate that she has a lot to offer, or her generation have a lot to offer, and do look at things differently to what we do now. However, there are times when clearly you can see the maturity is just not there, it's just not clicked in, and she appreciates that if you remind of certain things, she can at least have the maturity to see that she may have or may have not made a balanced decision. So it is difficult. I do appreciate there are some people that we all, I'm sure, are aware of, that a 40-year-old, 60-year-old, and they couldn't make a balanced decision even to this day. So I have mixed feelings with this, and although I do support young people and I do encourage them to get involved, I think it is probably just at the edge to say that they're okay at 16. 18, I think, is just about the balance. I would think they can make a good decision and be able to stand by it.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Surresti, please.
Age, mate. It's age. Good. Sorry, Mr. Mayor. I honestly thought you said Councillor Swift. Interesting. I must admit, we have the group will vote obviously the way it wants to vote, but I actually think that one of the things that I enjoy most in life is having the opportunity to talk to what I call youngsters. That's because I'm so old. And, when I say youngsters, I love going into the schools when I get the opportunity and talk to the kids in the schools. I go to the university and talk to them. And quite frankly, I've come to the opinion that age is not something that indicates common sense or intelligence. I'm sorry, you can find a 16-year-old who is as bright as a button and knows exactly what they want and knows exactly what they want to do. And quite frankly, there are people I know who are 60 and they still haven't worked it out yet. So I actually don't think that age is anything to do with it. And I actually do believe that if we were giving them the opportunity to think through the issues, because I think half the time we say, oh, they're not interested, but the reason they're probably not interested is because they can't vote, and so why would they be interested? But I think if they were given the opportunity and the chance to actually look at what the issues are and make a decision, I suspect they probably wouldn't vote Tory at that age, but I still think they ought to be given the opportunity to make that decision. And I'm going to support the motion. I think it's an opportunity they should be given, and if they were my kids, I'd want them to vote. My 5-year-old's got more sense than some people I know are 40.
Great, thanks, Councillor. Councillor Muckle, please.
Thank you, Mayor. I consider myself slightly young still, so I'll speak for myself, but I've worked with young people for over 15 years. And we get mixed reviews about this, whether they should be allowed to vote or not. But in my experience, I have to say that I find that a 16-year-old is just about gathering their emotions and feelings together. I think even 18 is slightly debatable. I take on board what Councillor Surresti said. But rather than saying that this is the motion that we want to be putting forward, we want to be looking at providing them with education facilities within schools so that they understand what civic participation is, so they understand what they're voting for, rather than just saying, yeah, I'm 16 now and I can go and vote, or I'm 18, I can go and vote. We need to be looking at provisions so that they understand what they're actually standing for.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Jamil.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I also rise to support this motion, but I think it's asking council to give people that choice. I find myself agreeing with Councillor Surresti. There are some 30, 40, 50-year-olds that you can't get any sense of, that are not interested. However, I do believe that if we can get them interested at a younger age, then hopefully that they will then participate in future years. And it's about democracy, and it's about enticing people at an early age to get involved. Now, Councillor Hercules talked about, parties clamouring, but then I see, a certain party that are not clamouring, not keen, and I ask the question, I wonder why that is. So I ask people to support the motion.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Shahid, would you like to exercise your right to speak?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll do just very briefly. We live in a society, and have done for a long time now, where from the age of 16 people are, among many other things, able to seek full-time employment, start a family, fight for their country, get married, all of which are impacted upon by the controlling party at that respective time. So we have someone who is directly affected by it and actively contributing to a society in which they have no say. We live in a democracy, and as such should behave like one, and allow those who are contributing towards society to have a say in this future by being permitted to stick a cross in that box. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Sanford, as mover of the original motion, you may now sum up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The great Liberal Prime Minister, Mr. Gladstone, said there's no power on earth so great as an idea whose time has come. And I think we've actually had a really good debate in the council chamber, and I particularly welcome some of the comments from members of the Conservative group, because they weren't articulating official Conservative party policy. but they were actually, I think in the words that Councillor Murphy put forward, talking about a logical extension of our franchise. I think what we've seen from some members of the council chamber is almost like the forces of conservatism, but the forces of conservatism on this particular issue don't necessarily reside in the Conservative Party. I think that the people who are supporting this motion are doing it from an optimistic point of view. I was trying to make a note of all the comments that were made, and I was going to respond to all of them, but there were such a large number of really good comments, and I'm not really going to try to. Councillor Forbes put a rather bark comment and said that this wasn't in the coalition agreement. Well, next time the Deputy Prime Minister has a word with me, I will pass that comment on to him. I think Councillor Fox made an interesting comment. He said, well, some young people have made some rather silly remarks. I think if making a silly remark were to disqualify you from the franchise, many members of this council will be disqualified. So I don't think that's a particularly strong argument to put forward. I think Councillor Swift's comment was slightly patronising, to say that something about young people under 16 wearing nappies. I don't think that adds anything positive, so I'm not going to respond to that. I think, Councillor Lane, in opposing the motion, makes some good points. I think, it is at the end of the day, it's a matter of opinion. But I think that, we actually went through a situation in 1832 when you could only vote if you remember the landed gentry. We've been through a situation where working class people weren't able to vote. The same comments were put, working class people wouldn't understand the issues that were involved. I think, we've really got to approach this from an optimistic point of view. And for members who are concerned about education, I'd just like to say that the final paragraph of the motion, even though we've had citizenship education compulsory since 2002, the final paragraph does say that there is further work to be done. We should engage with our schools and try and get these issues over to people. Make young people realise how important it is to vote. Those young people in Scotland realise and participate in massive numbers, and I think this is something that we ought to take forward.
Thank you, Councillor Sanford. We'll now move on to the vote on the motion. All those in favour?
Pardon? Judy is, but he ain't.
Those against? Not voting? Results: 432 against 13, not voting for. The motion is carried.